Ukraine's HIMERA UW-proof radio test shocks Putin.
It is February 10th, 2026, and the word is finally coming out of the ATAK Battle Lab.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
Join me in the latest program by Defense Report for the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover...
Well, what can only be described as a technological earthquake. It's something that just rumbled through the Pentagon and is probably causing some very serious heartburn in Moscow right now.
And we're not talking about a new missile.
No, not a stealth bomber, not a hypersonic missile. We're talking about the results of a U.S. Air Force test. It was called Operation Fuzzy Bunny.
Part of the big future flag exercises.
Exactly. And the star of the show was a handheld radio built by a Ukrainian startup, a radio that just walked into a top-tier NATO electronic warfare environment, and you could argue completely embarrassed legacy systems that cost 20, maybe 30 times as much.
We're talking about HIMERA, and while a name like Fuzzy Bunny might sound a little playful, the implications here are deadly serious.
Right.
This device, it was born from the blackouts and the sheer desperation of Kyiv back in 2022. And it just successfully navigated one of the most intense EW stress tests the U.S. military can throw at a piece of hardware.
So, our mission in this deep dive is to unpack this test, but also to look at the much bigger picture here. This is a classic David versus Goliath story.
It really is.
But it has huge implications for how NATO, how the West, thinks about buying military gear. We're going to break down the tech, the tactics, and the business of why a cheap radio might just be the most dangerous thing on the modern battlefield.
It's the perfect place to focus. We often get fixated on the big metal.
Tanks, F-16s, aircraft carriers.
All of that.
Yeah.
But if you talk to anyone who's actually been on the ground in Ukraine, they'll tell you the real war, the invisible war, is being fought in the electromagnetic spectrum.
Let's start right there, because for the average listener, I think a radio is it's a walkie-talkie. You push a button, you talk. Why is this specific piece of kit generating these kinds of headlines?
There's a grim maxim that has emerged in this war. It's one that's basically been written in blood. Artillery follows radio.
That's a chilling phrase. Let's break that down. What does that actually look like on the ground?
So in a modern conflict like this, the electromagnetic spectrum is a battlefield. It's just as real as a trench.
Right.
In the early days of the invasion, and honestly, this goes back to 2014, Ukrainian units were often forced to use off-the-shelf civilian radios.
You mean like the Motorola's you'd use for hiking or something?
Exactly. That or just their standard mobile phone.
Which are completely unencrypted.
Completely. But even if they were encrypted, the real issue is the signal itself. The moment you key up a standard radio, you're blasting a signal out. Russian electronic warfare units, which are historically very, very sophisticated, they pick up that energy spike instantly. They triangulate the source, and often within 2 or 3 minutes, a grad rocket barrage or an artillery shell is raining down on those exact coordinates.
So the very act of communicating is like lighting a giant flare over your own head that says, "I am here, please destroy me."
That's a perfect way to put it. And this is where the disconnect happened with a lot of Western military thinking.
I think so.
For the last 20 years, NATO forces, the U.S., the U.K., France, they've been operating in what we call benign electromagnetic environments.
Afghanistan, Iraq.
Right. The insurgents there could shoot at you, they could plant IEDs, but they didn't have spectrum analyzers, they didn't have massive jamming systems.
So our tech got complacent. It sounds like we built all this gear for a fight where we already owned the airwaves.
We did. Our gear got heavy, it got incredibly expensive, and it got very, very loud, electronically speaking. It just assumed spectrum dominance. Then 2022 happened.
And Ukraine is fighting in the most contested spectrum in modern history.
The most. Russia is jamming GPS, they're jamming Starlink, they're jamming traditional tactical radios. The airwaves are just a wall of noise.
And into this chaos steps HIMERA. Now, this isn't some Lockheed Martin or Raytheon project that took 15 years and billions of dollars to develop. This is a startup, isn't it?
It is. Founded by Misha Rudiminsky and Alexei Linikit.
Yeah.
Right in 2022, they saw this artillery follows radio problem firsthand.
They were seeing it happen in real time.
Yeah. They saw territorial defense units, regular people defending their own neighborhoods just getting hammered because they were using commercial gear. They realized they didn't just need a better radio, they needed an invisible one.
Invisible to the Russian scanners.
That's it. A device that could transmit without lighting up that flare we talked about. And crucially, they had to do it cheaply. They needed thousands of them, not dozens.
Okay, let's get into the weeds on the technology, because this is what led to this incredible success at the future flag exercises. The device is the G1 Pro. Visually, it's pretty unassuming. It just looks like a rugged black brick with an antenna. But what is happening under the hood that makes it so different from, say, a standard L3 Harris radio a U.S. Marine might carry?
Well, first, you have to talk about the price, because that really drives the entire strategy. A standard issue U.S. military tactical radio can run you anywhere from $15,000 to, $20,000 per unit.
Which makes you terrified to lose it or leave it behind in a firefight.
Exactly. It's a sensitive item. The HIMERA radio is in the hundreds of dollars. The founders just say it's tens of times lower than the Western equivalents.
How do they even do that?
They use commercial off-the-shelf components. So basically taking regular electronics you can find on the market, but then writing brilliant specialized code to control them.
Okay, but cheap doesn't always mean effective. Usually it's the opposite. If the Russians turn on a massive jammer, how does a $300 radio punch through when the expensive stuff fails?
See, that's the key. It doesn't punch through. That's the old way of thinking. It slips around.
It slips around?
It relies on two main concepts, LPI and LPD. That's low probability of intercept and low probability of detection.
Okay, unpack those acronyms for me. What's the real difference between intercept and detection here?
Okay, think of a standard radio as someone shouting across a crowded, noisy room to a friend. Even if they're shouting in a code, that's your encryption. Everyone in the room knows they're shouting, and everyone can point to exactly where they're standing. That's detection.
I see. And HIMERA?
HIMERA whispers. Its power output is adjustable from 0.2 watts all the way down to, well, up to about 2 watts.
That's incredibly low power.
It's tiny. It puts out just enough energy to reach the person next to you, or maybe the nearest repeater, but not enough to trigger a sensor 5 miles away. It just blends into the background noise.
Okay, so that handles detection. You're whispering so the enemy doesn't even know you're there.
Yeah.
But what about the jamming? If the enemy is just blasting white noise across the whole room, whispering won't help. You can't whisper over a jet engine.
Right. And that's where FHSS comes in, frequency hopping spread spectrum. Now, this tech has been around for a while, but it's the way they implement it. The best analogy I've seen is a river and a dam.
I like analogies. Walk me through it.
Okay, imagine your radio signal is a stream of water trying to get from point A to point B.
Got it.
Russian jamming is a dam. It blocks the river. It stops the flow of communication.
So standard tech just tries to blast through the dam with more pressure, more power. I'll just shout louder than you can jam.
Correct. And that just makes you an even bigger target. HIMERA does something different. It takes that stream of water and breaks it into thousands of tiny droplets. Then it hops those droplets across different frequencies at a rate of roughly 50 hops per second.
So it's constantly changing the channel.
Faster than the jammer can react.
Yeah.
By the time the Russian EW system detects a tiny signal on 145 megahertz and tries to block it,
It's already gone.
it's already moved to 430 megahertz, then 900, and so on. It's just finding the tiny cracks in the dam. The water still gets through, just not as one big, obvious stream.
That is brilliant. It's a game of whack-a-mole, where the mole is moving faster than the hammer.
A perfect description.
And this all brings us back to the breaking news. That U.S. field test, Operation Fuzzy Bunny. They didn't just look at it in a lab, they put these in the hands of actual UF airmen.
That's right. This was part of Future Flag 25-3. The U.S. Air Force creates this simulated multi-domain environment. It's basically a high-tech war game designed to break things.
And they gave these radios to soldiers with, what, minimal training?
Minimal to none. And that's a huge deal. Usually, military comms gear requires a week-long course just to figure out the menu system.
Oh, I've heard the stories.
And that was the first big win. The feedback was it just worked as a primary coordination tool with almost zero friction. The soldiers just picked them up and started using them.
But that wasn't the big headline, was it?
No, the stat that really caught everyone off guard, the thing that had the generals raising their eyebrows, was the endurance.
The battery life.
48 hours on a single charge.
Wow. That's significant. My smartphone doesn't last that long just sitting on my desk.
Think about it. It's a logistical dream. If you're a special forces team behind enemy lines or just infantry in a muddy trench, you measure your life in ounces. Standard radios burn power, and you have to carry pounds of spare batteries. HIMERA gives you 2 full days.
So it's lighter, cheaper, easier to use, and harder to detect. I have to play devil's advocate here, though. There has to be a physics trade-off, right?
There is.
You said it whispers at low power. If you're whispering, you can't be heard 5 kilometers away. You have to be sacrificing range for that stealth.
You're absolutely right. There's no magic in physics. In a dense urban environment, with concrete walls, the range might drop to 500 meters.
Okay.
In open terrain, maybe 2 or 3 kilometers max. That is short for a tactical radio.
So if your platoon is spread out over a large area or you need to talk to headquarters 10 miles back, the system just fails.
It would fail, yes, if it were just a simple walkie-talkie. But HIMERA isn't designed that way.
It's a network.
It's a node in a mesh network. And this is where the B1 autonomous repeater comes in.
This part of the research just fascinated me. This is the solution to the last mile problem in combat.
Exactly. Normally, to extend your range, you build a big repeater tower on a hill. But in Ukraine, a big tower is just a big target. A missile hits it, and your whole network is dark.
Right.
So HIMERA built the B1. It's a small, rugged box. And get this, it has a 14-day battery life.
2 weeks.
2 weeks autonomous. So you don't build a tower. You take a cheap consumer drone, you fly it out into the gray zone, that deadly no man's land between the trenches, and you just drop the repeater.
You drop it on a roof, in a tree.
Onto a roof, into a tree line, hide it in some rubble. You seed the battlefield with them. You just litter the zone with these cheap repeaters.
It's a web.
Precisely. The Kartia Brigade has been doing exactly this. They drop these repeaters, and if the Russians blow up one building, the signal just hops to the next available repeater. It's self-healing.
You can't kill the network unless you bomb every square inch.
You can't. And I saw you caught the note about the balloons, which sounds almost archaic, like something from World War I.
Yeah, the Arabovovna balloons. Tell me about that.
It's just low-tech meeting high-tech. They tested lifting these repeaters 800 meters into the air on a tethered balloon. It's simple physics, line of sight. When you get that high up, that 3-kilometer range suddenly extends to 32 kilometers.
So you create this persistent umbrella of communication over an entire sector powered by cheap boxes you can afford to lose.
Exactly. And this is where the software comes in, because we're not just talking about voice comms anymore. Alpha, move to Bravo. That's old school.
Right. Voice is slow. Data is fast.
Voice is almost secondary in many cases. You need coordinates. HIMERA integrates directly with ATAK.
The Android Team Awareness Kit, which is basically the NATO standard app for situational awareness, Google Maps for war.
It is. Through a plugin, the HIMERA radio talks directly to the soldier's phone or tablet. So a scout sees a tank. He doesn't get on the radio and try to describe the location. He just taps a point on his map in ATAK.
And that data packet sends instantly through the mesh.
Instantly. That encrypted frequency-hopping data packet goes through his radio, bounces through those drone-dropped repeaters, and lands on the artillery commander's tablet miles away.
It's like Uber for artillery.
That's a great way to put it. It integrates with Ukrainian systems like Delta and Kropiva, too. It just speeds up the kill chain drastically.
And doing all of that with a device that costs a fraction of the legacy gear. I can see why the U.S. Air Force is so interested.
So we're seeing the future of warfare. It's cheap, it's distributed, and it's fast.
I want to zoom out a bit to the future now, because we hear a lot about the quantum threat. Is it really necessary to worry about quantum computers for a battlefield radio? That feels like overkill.
It's not overkill, it's insurance. There's a strategy being used right now called harvest now, decrypt later.
Harvest now, decrypt later. That sounds ominous.
It is. Intelligence agencies, China, Russia, the U.S., are scooping up encrypted traffic right now. They can't break standard AES 256 encryption. Not yet.
But they're storing all that data.
They're storing it, betting that in 10 or 15 years, they'll have a quantum computer that can crack it in seconds.
And that data could contain anything. Troop movements, sources.
A long-term nightmare. So HIMERA isn't waiting. They've partnered with a Canadian company, Quantropy, to integrate something called QE.
Which is post-quantum encryption.
Yes. It's a layer of security specifically designed to withstand the brute force of future quantum computers. It's incredibly forward-thinking for a startup. Most major defense contractors are still just talking about this on their roadmaps.
And the market is responding. I mean, it's not just the U.S. Air Force testing it. There's real money moving here.
There is. They just closed a $2.5 million seed round. But the bigger indicator is adoption. They have officially fulfilled a state order for a European NATO country.
An anonymous one, I take it.
Anonymous for security reasons, but think about what that means. A NATO member nation is choosing to buy Ukrainian tech to upgrade its own capabilities. That's a massive validation.
And they're setting up distribution in the U.S.
Yeah, with reticulate micro, it represents a complete reversal of the traditional flow of technology. For decades, it's been west to east. We send the high-tech gear out.
And now Ukraine is exporting superior technology back to the West.
It's the battle-hardened premium.
That's the perfect term for it.
You can test a radio in a lab in Massachusetts for years, where it's clean and controlled. HIMERA was tested in Bakhmut. It was forged in the fires of the most intense electronic warfare environment on the planet.
You just can't simulate that.
Yeah.
You can't replicate the stress of real combat in a lab.
No. And Western militaries are waking up to this. They're realizing that their expensive legacy systems might not survive 5 minutes against a peer adversary. HIMERA has proven it can survive for years.
So this brings us to the big economic question. We touched on it. $20,000 versus maybe $500. If this takes off, does it just break the business model for the major defense contractors?
It certainly threatens it. We're seeing a huge paradigm shift from few, heavy, and expensive to many, cheap, and smart. If you have a $20,000 radio, you treat it like gold. If you have a $300 radio that works better, you equip every single soldier. You drop repeaters into trees and you don't worry if you lose them.
It changes everything. Logistics, tactics, the budget.
It empowers the individual soldier and it creates resilience. If one node breaks, the mesh survives. And it asks hard questions of the Western taxpayer. Why are we paying premium prices for tech that might be obsolete the moment it hits a real battlefield?
It's the Silicon Valley mindset: move fast, iterate, applied to survival.
And the Ukrainians didn't have a choice. They had to innovate or die. And in doing so, they've leapfrogged the global industry in certain niches like this one.
So, to wrap this up, the Fuzzy Bunny has teeth.
Very sharp ones.
We have a low-cost, mesh network, quantum-secure radio that has proven it can whisper past the Russian war machine and seriously impress the U.S. Air Force.
It's an amazing case study. And it's a reminder that in war, the most valuable asset isn't always the biggest gun. Sometimes it's the ability to communicate when everyone else has been silenced.
And to keep communicating for 48 hours without needing a power outlet.
That definitely helps.
Before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've talked about how this radio disrupts the battlefield, but think about the economic disruption. If a startup in a war zone can out-innovate multi-billion-dollar legacy defense contractors using off-the-shelf parts and just better software, what does that say about the future of the entire military-industrial complex? Is the era of the $20,000 radio over? And if it is, who else is about to be disrupted by a couple of engineers in a basement in Kyiv?
It's a thought that should keep a few CEOs awake at night.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your trusted source for timely, in-depth military and defense analysis. We'll see you next time. Keep supporting us so we can continue bringing you the latest developments from Ukraine and around the world.